So, welcome. I am beyond excited today to bring you an extraordinary man that I met, probably 10, 11 years ago. I saw him on a stage at an event that I was participating in. He is known affectionately as Antarctic Mike. He is Mike Pierce, and he has quite frankly lived an extraordinary life. I actually had him come to Eugene and speak to one of my CEO groups. And I would say lives changed that day. He's come a long way since I saw him then. I mean, he has a journey to share that is what I would say is Mike speaks about the power of the human spirit and about the fact that we all have Antarcticas in our lives that we can either choose to take on or not. And I think he has had another Antarctic in his life in the last couple of years. And that's why we're here today. So I want to just thank you for joining us and being here to share your experience and what you've learned along the second Antarctic journey that you've been on. So welcome, Mike.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm honored to be here, and I'm glad to enrich the lives of your listeners.
Thank you. Thank you. So just a little bit of background for our listeners would be great. And then obviously the real meat of our conversation today is with your wife and the journey around her experience with opioids and recovery and just the journey that she was on, but also the journey that you've been on with her. And because that's the one that we don't normally talk about.
True. That one often doesn't get mentioned because it's not in the circle of victory that most people, how they define circle of victory. So, but it's real.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it takes a village to create recovery, and I consider it a parallel recovery. Usually when we're loving someone, we have our own recovery to do.
True. It's absolutely true. So,
Yeah. Yeah. So, a little bit of background on you.
background. Let's see. Grew up in Pennsylvania, defected after high school, went to college in Colorado, where I met Angela, and finished school and then got married in 1990 and ended up in the recruiting industry in the early 90s, just after we moved to San Diego. And then my life changed radically when I walked into a bookstore in 2001. I discovered my first book about Antarctic history by reading the Shackleton story when in 1914, 28 people got stranded in Antarctica for 2 years and all came home alive. And after reading that story, I saw how the journey that they were on was very parallel to the journey that most of us are on today, in that difficulties, challenges, unexpected changes come in front of our lives every single day.
Yeah.
And the way that they responded to those events is very similar to the way we should respond to those events. So I fell in love with that story. And I guess you could say I more than fell in love with it because I became obsessed with it. Is probably more accurate.
Yeah,
Because
I'd say so.
because I made the decision in 2005. I made the decision that I was going to follow them, literally, all the way to Antarctica. So I signed up for the first ever Antarctic Ice Marathon. Yes, it's a real 26.2 mile marathon run. The difference is this one was taking place on an ice shelf located 600 miles from the South Pole. And so now the real comical part of the story is I don't live in Minneapolis or Canada, right? And Angela was not going to move there for training purposes. I live walking distance to the beach in San Diego. I know that's that's the comedy part of it, right? So in order to prepare for Antarctica, I literally talked my way inside a commercial freezer that was a locally run business here in San Diego. I spent 2 years inside this freezer, and I ended up going to Antarctica twice in the year 2006. The first trip was to run the marathon. The second trip was to run a 100-kilometer ultra marathon. And both of them I completed. And then I returned and I got into the speaking business. And little did I know that all of that preparation for Antarctica would not just enable me to do what I did back in 2006, to run on the ice.
Yeah.
More importantly, it prepared me for what I consider the most difficult and the most important Antarctic moment of my entire life, which was the year 2023. Now, the backstory that the listeners have to know is that before I met my wife, Angela, in 1987, while she was in college and I had just finished college. And prior to that, 2 years before that, she almost died. She had a major rock climbing fall. She used to go to school in Durango, Colorado, which is in southwestern Colorado. I
Yeah.
was living in Boulder at the time, going to school there. And Angela fell 150 feet off a mountain. Her bones were broken in 162 places. It's a miracle anybody could even live. I mean, you could be changing one of these light bulbs in my ceiling, fall off a ladder 10 feet, you can break your neck and die. It probably happens every day. We just don't hear about it.
Yeah.
How somebody could survive what she did is unexplainable, right? So that was before I met her. So when I met her and decided to date her and marry her, I kind of knew going into this that we were in for a different kind of an experience as a couple, and we were.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, we had all kinds of limitations and different ways that we had to do things in order to function, because Angela lived with a series of disabilities since the day I met her. But when you care about somebody, it wasn't a lot of skin off my back. It was just, this is just kind of what you do.
Right.
So it was really the only thing I knew from day one. So, we just figured out how to make it work, and we did. But all those medical problems compounded over the years. And I don't know if you want me to go all the way through the end of the story yet or not, but that's a little bit of a background on who I am.
Yeah. And so I think for our listeners, in some respects, they feel like they're facing an Antarctic moment every day.
Oh, sure.
With loving somebody who's in active addiction mode. And so the lessons that you gleaned along the way, and the student that you were of that particular journey way back when, and the journey of your journey of learning the lessons not only related to Antarctica, but your journey with Angela.
Right. Yeah. Because of her accident, this was now, let me think, this was probably now when she was about 30. She was born in, I'm doing some math, 66. So around 1995, she started struggling with physical pain. I mean, as you can imagine, it's kind of like if somebody's been in a serious car accident or something like that, right? They have a lot of pain. So in 96, a brand new painkiller became available to us. It was called fentanyl.
Yeah.
I'll never forget this. I remember Angela's doctor. His name was Mark. Can't remember his last name, but he was a doctor at Scripps Hospital, which is a local, pretty well-known medical facility in San Diego. And so he was kind of ahead of like their pain division, if you call it that, right? And so we ended up seeing him, and he prescribed this. And it was like this little sticky patch that you put on your arm or your leg, and you wear it for 3 days, and then you change it. And it seemed to really help. It seemed to have enabled her to function without a lot of discomfort.
Yeah.
Well, she also discovered, this was around age 30. So around the same time, she started having some real psychological difficulties, not just physical. And she discovered that she had some problems in her past that she sort of seemed to hide, or ignore, or run away from, or whatever you want to call it. And they started to surface.
Yeah.
And so she started seeing a psychologist or a psychiatrist. I get them all confused. Somebody who's kind of a mental health professional, and he was an actual medical doctor. And so after seeing him, he started prescribing her certain prescription medications to help with this. I don't remember all the different medications, but it was a series of these, right?
Right.
And they seemed to help. And so we thought, hey, she can go outside, she can walk to the beach, she can go on an airplane, she could live life. And so this continued for quite a long time until she decided that enough was enough. She
Yeah.
wanted to get off of all this stuff. Because what she said was, she said these medications sort of made her feel foggy, is the way she put it.
Yeah.
Almost like she was looking ahead of her and there was a fog. And she
Right.
became very conscious of this and she didn't like it. And
Yeah.
she started reading about it and talking to other people about this, right? This is now the year 2018. So she's been on these medications now for a good 20 plus years. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
And while they enabled her to function, little did we know they were doing damage to her long term. So she decided in 2018, I'm going to come off of them. And so she literally started weaning herself off of these one by one. Now, she did this letting the doctor know this is what I'm going to do, right? So they knew what she was doing. So never did she take anything or subtract anything without medical advice, okay? So she did this and she was very successful. She would cut the dosage in half, then cut it in half. I mean, she just figured out how to do this on her own. Well, this worked until she got down to the last three medications.
Yeah.
And I remember what they were. It was fentanyl, it was something called Geodon, and something called Luvox. And she could not get off of these on her own. So she actually had a friend who checked himself into a medical facility here in San Diego that's not far from us, that's all supervised with MDs and nurses. And it's basically like, we'll get you off of this stuff, right? And this is mostly, it's a combination of people that are on illegal street drugs, could be alcohol, could be prescription medication under a doctor's care, as was Angela's case. But it's one of these things where you basically move in as a resident and it's very controlled. You can't go out, the doors are locked. I mean, they're very careful about protecting these people, right? So she checked into this place. This was in early December of 2018. And she spent 2 months in there, about 8 weeks. And it worked. I mean, she came off of everything. And then when she came home, they put her on something called Suboxone, which is a controlled substance that basically minimizes the withdrawal symptoms that somebody has after they stop using medication, whether it's heroin or prescription medications or whatever. And so Angela came home. This is in January of 2019. So she came home, got on the Suboxone, and she did okay. But there were a lot of nightmares, and I could see the effects of the withdrawal symptoms. Even though Suboxone was part of the picture, it sort of minimized it, but it was still difficult. She would have nightmares and struggles. I mean, at times I felt like I was like watching a dog that got hit by a car that you knew wasn't going to get better. I mean, part of you is thinking, man, I just want to put the dog down. Not that I was going to put her down, but you know, part of me was thinking she'd just be better off if she died because this is so difficult for her. It's not fair, but she got through it, right? I just said to myself, Mike, for every day that she goes through this, you're closer to the finish line. This is not going to go forever because these things will leave her body and they will have, you know, the impact will go down over time. And it did. It took about, I want to say, about almost a year after she went off the Suboxone. And then what she did was she took herself off the Suboxone. You can't just stop Suboxone.
Right.
You have to kind of wean yourself. So what she would do, Suboxone is, if I have a little piece of paper here as an example, this would be like a Suboxone. It was like a little square that was like a dissolvable thing that you would put in your mouth under your tongue and it would dissolve. So what Angela did was she cut it in half and then in half and in half. And it got so small, she had to use a tweezer and a knife to cut it in half because it's that small. She couldn't use her fingers. And it worked. It took her she did that for probably 2 months.
Yeah.
And she went off the Suboxone.
Right.
And by the time she went off the Suboxone, she was pretty normal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Until 2020. And then in early 2020, her kidneys failed for the second time in her life. And so she had to go on dialysis. Now, she had been a dialysis patient previous to this. This was back in 2010. She first went on dialysis, but for some reason, miraculously, after about a year of being on dialysis, her kidneys came back to function without assistance, which her nephrologist said, Mike, I've only seen this one other time in my 30 plus years in medicine, right? So it normally doesn't happen, right? People either stay on dialysis for a long time, they get a transplant, or they die generally, right? So she went back on dialysis in 2020. And it was pretty rough on her. I'll get to the 2023 when you want. But I mean, the thing that I'll say to your listeners is watching somebody come off of medications, I've never seen somebody in a war until I saw this. I mean, this was like the fight of your life. And it was so hard to watch. But at the same time, it was encouraging because I felt like it's finite. Like she's gonna, the withdrawal stuff it's gonna come down. It has to, because she's not feeding the monster anymore, right? The monster's done eating. So obviously it's like a car running. Eventually the gas is gonna run out, right?
So let me just ask you a question here, because this is probably one of the toughest things for those of us who love someone, is the witnessing of their suffering. And so I'm super curious, Mike, like, how did you navigate holding the space for her?
Well, I think number one, when you really love somebody, it's amazing what you'll do. It's amazing how much patience you have, how much tolerance you have, and how much you're willing to put up with when you really care. To me, it's almost the litmus test of how much you care. So I think that's number one. But I think number two, going back to Antarctica, going back to that time in the freezer, the real value of the freezer. Now, this is the funny part of the freezer. The freezer was only this big. I mean, it was basically, it was 59 feet from one wall to the other. And I would go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And I did this for 2 years, right? For hours and hours at a time. What this did, it turned out that the value of the freezer was not acclimating to the cold, but rather it was building the muscles of confidence in my mind. And one of the things I learned in that freezer was I had a flashback. I was in the freezer one day going back and forth, right? And I remembered something my old hockey coach from 1976 in Pennsylvania, where I grew up as a kid. One night he pulled me aside. I was an 11-year-old kid. And he said, Mike, you're going to play the game the way you practice. If the practice is harder, the game's easier. And the guy skated away, right? What he was really telling me was, Mike, look at difficulty differently. Most people see difficulty as an enemy, something to run away from. Maybe you should actually see it as an ally, something to run toward, not retreat from, right? And it reminds me of the animal, the buffalo, one of the only animals instinctively on Earth that actually will run into the storm as opposed to retreating and running away from it. And the buffalo does so because it instinctively knows that if it heads into the difficulty, the storm, it gets through it faster with less damage. Right? Think about it logically. If the storm's coming that way and you're going that way, right?
Just say that again, because I think so many of my audience, they're in the storm every day.
Right.
And so the brilliance of what you just said needs another statement again.
When storms come, they're going to do damage regardless, right? The question is how much. And we have a degree of control over how much damage is done to us when those storms come. Because I think we prolong the damage and do more of it, allow more of it by trying to run away from it. You can't outrun a storm. It's impossible. You just can't. And so when you go into the difficulty, you get through it faster with less damage. Angela and I talked about this extensively during our years together. We used to talk about the value of the freezer. We used to talk about looking at difficulty as the greatest teacher in the world. We literally would talk about this because there have been times, I mean, I have more frequent flyer miles at Scripps Hospital than I do on Delta Airlines. And I'm like a 1,000,000-miler on Delta, right? And one of the things, and I mean, I've seen the blue light behind the bed go beep. I've seen that at 2:00 in the morning. I know what that's like. So for any of your listeners who have been with somebody they care about and they've seen the trauma and the convulsions and the everything. I've seen every pill, every procedure. I've seen organs come out of the body. I mean, I have literally seen it all, right? And I think one of the things Angela and I have talked about over the years is how these moments of real trauma have been the source of a lot, not only a lot of the wisdom that we've seen,
Right.
but I think what we've also seen is we've allowed these difficulties to become the strongest bonding agent between us. I do believe that difficulty is the strongest bonding agent between two people.
Yeah.
Now, the caveat to what I just said is you have to look at the difficulty through the right lens and you have to respond appropriately. You can't react. You got to respond. And there's a big difference between reacting and responding, right? You got to think about what you're doing before you do it. And I would consciously tell myself this. And so the answer to your question, how did I get through these moments?
Yeah.
I would just go back in the freezer mentally. And I would say, okay, Mike, this is difficult. What's in front of you? Go into it. Don't run away from it. Embrace it. Ask yourself the question, what is the lesson I'm supposed to learn?
Right.
Because there's some kind of valuable piece of wisdom or insight in that dark cloud. And I would ask myself that, and I would consciously go into that storm, and I would just lean on God and say, I need to understand what I'm trying to learn here, God, right? And I didn't run away from the difficulty. I guess that's the short answer to the question. I ran into it.
Yeah. Well, and the mindset shift that it takes, because a lot of people, they don't hold that notion of when it's really dark, when it's really traumatic, when it feels like, oh my God, I mean, is this ever going to end? They're not sitting there usually thinking, okay, what are the gifts and lessons embedded in this experience for me? And so, but the power of doing that, because I do the same thing and I have for years, is that your brain is going to answer you. It's going to search for the gifts and the lessons that will actually serve you in your life. And so there's always a gift and opportunity in everything that we go through, but you have to be willing to ask the question.
You know, the other thing I'll say is going back to Antarctica, my hero, Ernest Shackleton, going back to that story in 1914 when those 28 guys were stranded for 2 years. One of the things that Shackleton said when they returned, he said this, we had seen God in his splendors. We heard the text that nature renders. We had reached the naked soul of man.
Yeah.
And I long wondered, what did he mean by the naked soul of man? And then I figured it out. The naked soul of man is this. It's the intersection where the very important intersects the very difficult. The very important intersects the very difficult. And I thought to myself, usually the things in life that are the most important are found in an environment of difficulty.
Right.
Because it's the difficulty that actually establishes the value and the meaning of anything in life, right? It's like if you work hard, it's that hard work. That's the value of what you earn, right? It's not the number. It's the work it took to get that's the value. And I think that, you know, I would look at these circumstances and I would say, man, I have stood in that intersection called the naked soul of man with Angela so many times since the day I met her. But that's where life, that's the best place in life to be. Now, granted, at the time, it may not feel good. You may not understand everything. It may not be real happy. Okay, I get.
Yeah.
But that's where you actually become more mature. That's where you become more wise. That's where you actually grow. You don't grow in the intersection of being on vacation and when everything's great. You know, that's not when you grow.
Yeah.
You grow when it's really hard. And so, yeah, and granted, I've had more intersections like that in 30 some years than most people have had in 10 lifetimes. But you know what? That's the circumstance I found myself in, and I can't change it. So I'm not going to complain or cry about it. That's just what I had to contend with.
Well, and I mean, your soul signed up for it. And my story would be it signed up for it because you have a bigger purpose on the planet.
Right.
And this was part of the crucible for you. And so who you are today has been in that crucible, Antarctic, but also your Antarctics with Angela.
I mean, I'll say this to your listeners. I realize that some of these people are in very difficult situations. Legitimately, it might be more difficult than the situations I've been in, right? Who knows?
Mm-hmm.
Difficulty is a very relative word, but I'm going to assume that a
Mm-hmm.
lot of these people that might hear this are in some very, very traumatic and difficult intersections, okay?
Yes.
I do believe that the reason you're there is to benefit somebody else. I'm very grounded spiritually. And I
Mm-hmm.
think if you're not, man, it's like climbing up a hill without a rope. I mean, can you do it? Maybe. But you can
Mm-hmm.
also win the Range Rover at the fair, which that happens like once every 30,000 years, right? I mean, you can win the
Mm-hmm.
lotto, right? But
Mm-hmm.
generally speaking, you're not going to do it, right? You're not going to get up these mountains without a
Right.
rope. I mean, it's hard to get through these circumstances and these intersections if you're not grounded spiritually. And as a person who's grounded spiritually, one of the things that I
Mm-hmm.
believe is that the reason we're here, our
Mm-hmm.
ultimate purpose is to walk each other home.
Yeah.
Therefore, if my life can be a model and an example and an inspiration to call
Mm-hmm.
somebody higher or give somebody hope,
Mm-hmm.
then that's a big part of my purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And I do believe that what I've been through is a picture of hope because
Right.
I've been through some really hard stuff and
Mm-hmm.
I've clearly come out the other side better instead of bitter. And I
Mm-hmm.
think the reason I did so was to help somebody else who's going to go through the same intersection so that they
Yeah.
too can come out the other side better instead of bitter. So look at your
Mm-hmm.
circumstances as an opportunity
Mm-hmm.
to walk somebody else home.
Yeah.
It's a very different lens that I see the world through, but I think it's the lens that God designed for people.
I'm totally in agreement with you, and that's the lens that I choose to live into. And with all of the difficulties, that I went through relative to Sam, but I also grew up with a mom that was addicted to prescription medications and a brother who was a cocaine addict.
Oh,
So,
wow.
I've been through the crucible for most of my
Most of
life.
your life, right?
Yeah, and
Wow.
and so I do believe that all of that has been in service of who I
Right.
am today, but also so that I can serve at a much higher level and walk people home. I love how you
Right.
say that. It's such a beautiful way to frame it.
Should I take the listeners to the end of the
Yeah,
story? Okay.
yeah,
So going back to Angela, and after she got out of this rehab facility, she got off all the medications and she was very happy until her kidneys stopped functioning again. She had to go back on dialysis for a second time. This was in
yeah.
2020. Okay. So they put the catheter in and she goes to the dialysis center 3 times a week and they clean your blood and you come home and it's like, it's not a 911. Well, what
Mhm,
happened was in 2023, this was probably in May or June of 2023, he started having blood pressure problems. The kidneys are a very vascular organ, and there's a big correlation between blood pressure and the functionality of the kidney. And so
mhm,
what happens is, so you're hooked up to this machine and it basically drains your blood, it filters it and cleans it, and it puts it back in.
mhm,
And if the blood pressure gets either too high or too low, the machine will alarm and it will stop, right? For
mhm.
safety reasons. And
Right.
so this happened on a number of occasions. And if this happens and they can't fix the blood pressure, and normally that's a pretty easy problem to fix,
Yeah.
but if they can't fix it, they'll stop the process and they'll send you to the hospital. And
Mhm.
so they'd send her to the emergency room, like, okay, well, and they'll get the blood pressure under control and they'll do dialysis in the hospital. Well, this happened several times in the summer of 2023. And
Yeah.
then what they discovered was her catheter needed to be replaced, which is
Mhm.
not normal. Catheters generally don't fail because
Right.
there's not a lot of moving parts to it. And anything
Mhm.
mechanical that's not complicated and has a lot of moving parts is generally not problematic. But anyway, they switched catheters. Okay.
Mhm.
It started
Mhm.
to work again and then it stopped. So they switched the catheters again and again and again.
Yeah.
And in
Mm.
December of 2023, she was in the hospital and this blood pressure and catheter problem just continued and they couldn't figure it out until we met with a vascular surgeon. And he basically concluded that the reason she was having blood pressure and catheter problems was because the entire vascular system, which is the plumbing system in the body, that's the veins, the arteries, and the blood vessels, it basically collapsed.
Yeah.
And this is a common byproduct of dialysis over time and kidney failure. One of the consequences of this is your vascular system is going to collapse. I mean, it's like the plumbing system in your house, right? Eventually, the pipes are going to wear out. And now, fortunately, in a house, you can replace them, but in a human body, you can't replace a vascular system.
Right.
So now we're in December of 2023. And on December 10th, Angela and I were in the hospital and we were talking about this. And she said, Mike, let's look at this. I need a new kidney. I have to have surgery. I need blood transfusions on top of a vascular system that doesn't work.
Yeah.
She said, there's no way. And I said to her, well, we got to keep trying. I mean, and I said, we can't quit. And I thought, gee, isn't it funny how in our society, right, we have this baked in mindset that says, don't quit.
Right.
Get more grit, be more resilient, keep going at any cost. Let's be tough.
Right.
If you have to drag yourself across the finish, I mean, this is baked into our culture, right? And she said, Mike, there's a difference between quitting and surrendering.
Yeah.
And wisdom is to know the difference. That's literally what she said to me, right? And then she said the most profound thing. And I wasn't into this, because when she said, Mike, it's time to unplug and go home, I knew what that meant.
Right.
That was the end of her life. And she said, Mike, I need you to go back in the freezer. I knew exactly what she was saying. She was basically saying, I'm going that way, Mike. It's the end of my life. You're going that way. You're trying to save it. Mike, it's time to be the buffalo. It's time to turn around and go into the storm of difficulty with me.
Yeah.
So we did unplug. Unplug means no medical intervention, no doctors, no dialysis, no medications, nothing, no more medicine, period, right? And we came home on the 21st of December. And on December 28th, she's now in hospice.
Right.
And I mean, she's breathing and she's alive, but she's basically asleep. And if you know hospice, you know that they don't make anybody better, right? But they certainly make sure people don't hurt.
Right.
And on December 28th, I was sitting with her in the hospice care facility, and I was talking to her because the doctor said to me, Mike, the last thing to go is hearing. Talk to her.
Yeah.
She'll understand even though she can't respond. She'll hear you and understand you. So talk to her, right? So I was in there the entire morning. I mean, I relived 36 years of stories, right?
Yeah.
At 11:45, I said, I got to get out of here for a minute. I was just mentally, I was going to explode, right?
Sure.
I said to her, and I'm going to go eat lunch and I'll be back in a couple hours. I love you. If you want to go, it's okay.
Yeah.
And I left.
Yeah.
15 minutes later, my phone rang. Angela left for the last time.
Yeah.
And you know, it's funny because I go back to that day. That's December 28th of 23. I go back to that day and I remember being home and I thought, I'm not like overwhelmingly sad. I was more relieved than I was sad, right? And I thought, part of me felt guilty. Like, Mike, you should be falling on the floor with sadness and grief and right? I wasn't. Because in my case, I saw this coming for 35 years.
Right.
Because I knew from the day I met her, I knew she wasn't going to live to life expectancy. I knew it. I would consciously tell myself this as a young kid because of her accident, right? And so it was like I saw the train crash coming for 35 years.
Yeah.
I mean, I think this kind of loss is different than if there were no problems and she's coming home from the grocery store or Target and all of a sudden, bam, there's a car accident, right? And it's over, right? I mean, that's a different kind of loss. But nonetheless, you know, so in 24 now, my life's starting over for the first time by myself.
Right.
And that was foreign to me. But I said to myself, how am I going to do this? And I heard God's voice. Mike, remember what you learned from Shackleton. That was a great 36-year chapter of your life. That's the chapter called What Was. And it was a great chapter. Let it go. Live in the chapter called What Is. That's today.
Right.
Live in this chapter, right? And I did. And I decided I was going to get married again because I was married for nearly 36 years and it was good to me. So it left a good taste in my mouth. So of course I want to do it again, right?
Sure.
So I thought, okay, well, I got to start meeting people, right? I mean, kind of how you're going to get married, right? I can't go to Amazon and, buy a girlfriend or a fiance for, and if I spend $25 or more in the next minute and 57 seconds, she shows up at the front door by 5 o'clock, right? I'm sure you can get that somewhere online. It's not Amazon. It's probably another site, right? I wouldn't know what it is because I didn't look for it, right?
Yeah.
So I started dating people. And in April, I met somebody named Ellie who lived up in Los Angeles. And we ended up meeting together for the first time in May. I took the train to LA, met her for lunch. We had a great conversation. She's from Mexico and has a very interesting story. Her husband, Fernando, had died in 2020. And what's interesting is on this date, Ellie was using medical terms that most people don't know.
Right.
She used the words heparin, hemoglobin, and peritoneum. I knew exactly, those are kidney terms. And I said to her, did he die of kidney failure? She said, yes. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me.
Right.
Like, what are the odds? I mean, and he was only 55 when he died, and Angela was 57. The odds of somebody dying of renal failure in their 50s are not high.
Right.
I mean, if she and I were in our 80s, it would be more common, right? But not in our 50s, right? Because Ellie was 54, 53 when I met her, and I was 59. So we started dating, and it got pretty serious in the summer of last year. And then we got engaged on the 30th of August, and we got married on November 30th. And I look back at this 2-year period of my life, right?
Yeah.
And people say, how can you do this, Mike? How could you go 36 years with somebody who had all these medical problems, and then she dies and you're heartbroken because we had a good marriage? It wasn't like we had a bad marriage. I'm like, well, I'm glad she's out of my life now. It wasn't like that, right?
Right.
I lost somebody I loved, right? And how could you do this, Mike? Well, I go back to my Antarctic hero, Ernest Shackleton. I say, I learned how to let go. I learned how to turn the page on chapter 1 and start living in chapter 2, the chapter called What Is, not What Was. Chapter 1 is what was. Chapter 2 is what is. When you can be fully present in the moment today, you can make such better decisions. And that's exactly what I've learned to do. And I just trace this all back to my hero from 1914, my 2 years in the freezer. And I look at all these circumstances that I've lived through and I go, now I understand why all of this happened, right? If you would have told me back in 2005 and 6 when I was living in that freezer and going to Antarctica, if you would have told me, Mike, let me tell you where this is going to lead to, I never would have never believed it. But, that's exactly what happened, right?
Yeah.
None of us would believe the story ahead if we heard it.
Absolutely. I was saying this to somebody the other day. I said the exact same thing. If you had told me 20 years ago that this would have led to this today, I'm like,
not me. You got the wrong person.
Yeah, exactly. But I wouldn't do anything different.
Nope.
And I bless the journey with my son and am grateful for, all the things that stretched my edges and created all the, as you talked about earlier, the trauma and the intersection for me was very, I think through my son, that was the most kind of shattering,
Right.
particularly with the child, I think, for parents. It is the hardest thing because they're just part of our souls. And when they suffer like that, we tend to give our life force energy away to their suffering. And like you, need to pull our life force energy back to ourselves and learn to be who we are in the moment and choose who we are in the moment from a life giving perspective, instead of going down the rabbit hole of destruction with them.
And like you, if I went back and I could change anything, I wouldn't change a thing. As weird, as counterintuitive as this sounds, it's an honor to walk somebody to the end of life. It's an honor.
Oh, yes.
It is. I don't know if you've ever experienced it, but I'm sure some of your listeners have. Okay, yeah, you know what it's like. It's an honor.
For sure.
It's an honor. And, if you think about it too, I mean, this is the other lens I chose to look through. I call it life by design. God designed life to have a starting point and an ending point. Now, it's very fair to say everybody likes the start and nobody likes the end. we love to pick up the kitten, but the day you got to call the vet to put him down, oh, that's a terrible day, right? And most of your listeners have been on that day, right? It's terrible, right? Any pet owner is going to go through that. But you think about it, if I could have had Angela forever, like let's say I could have had her indefinitely, no matter how long, even if I lived to be 500, right? If I was guaranteed to have her for the rest of my life, all the time I would have ever spent with her wouldn't have been that special. Because if I know it's an endless supply, it has no value and no meaning.
Right.
Time only has value and meaning because we're conscious of the fact that it's finite, it's limited. And I think it's the fact that it's finite that makes it special. And I think that's why God created all of life, whether it's people, pets, plants, anything that's living has a starting point and an ending point. But it's for our good.
Right. Yeah, for sure. And the way that I think about it is this is just a physical form that we're in at this point. And yes, there's a start and an end to it. And so just understanding that, but also in the physical form, being present for our journey and what life's difficulties is showing up to help us figure out in our life journey. And then, as you said that, Mike, I'm thinking Angela is always with you.
Right.
She's always with you, and she will always be with you, just like you will always be with her.
She's just in a different state.
Yes.
Yeah, like water, ice, vapor, they're just different states of the same thing, right? Angela's just in a different state. Like ice turns to water, that it vaporizes, right? She's just in a different state. And I know her spirit and her presence is a part of my life. I know that. And it's guiding me, right? I know that. So it is fair to say that it's painful to go through this, okay?
Yeah.
And there are days when it still hurts.
Sure.
Okay? Pain's inevitable.
Right.
Suffering is a choice.
Yes.
And what I learned from a very wise CEO in Leadville, Colorado this past summer, he said to me, "Do you know what suffering is, Mike?" I said, "Tell me." He said, "Suffering is pain times resistance." And he said, the suffering doesn't come from the pain. It comes from the resistance that we put forth. We have full control over how much we're going to grip or release, right? We have full control over that. And we resist. No, I can't live with that. And I can't go through that. And we have all this resistance. And that's really where the suffering comes from. And when you just let go of the resistance, it's amazing how it frees your mind. And then you can go with the flow. And it works.
Yeah. Well, and that's part of the journey as a parent with an adult child that's dealing with addiction is in some respects, we need to love them and let them go. Because number one, they're on their own journey. We don't begin to know what it is in service of, but us holding on and thinking we know what should happen on their journey is like the chrysalis and the butterfly and the chrysalis is we can't cut the chrysalis. We have to allow for the struggle so that if and when they emerge on the other side in the physical form, there's a reason for that.
You're right.
I think the hardest part is that people, certainly with fentanyl, because, in addiction world, that's just like a crapshoot every time, is you have to I chose to get really clear about he could be gone at any moment. But I still needed to be in a whole place, separate and apart from him.
Right.
Which gave him, in a really strange way, permission to not worry about me and do his own journey, which freed him, like what you're just talking about.
Right. And what you described, I had the same thoughts because I'm a speaker. That's what I do for a living. So I'm always on airplanes and hotels, right? I'm out a lot. And many trips when I was traveling home, right, I'd be thinking to myself, I couldn't reach Angela on the phone, let's say, on a given trip, right? Like she might be asleep. She might be distracted. She wouldn't hear the phone, right? I mean, sometimes people don't pick up, right?
Yeah.
Of course, my mind starts spinning like, what happened, right? What if I come home and she's in a heap on the floor? Like that consciously. And I used to think about that. And I'm like, you know what? If God calls her home, God calls her home. One of the things when going back to that intersection called the naked soul of man, I was thinking about this. The first time I learned to let go of Angela, was actually Christmas Eve of 2018. What
Mm-hmm.
happened was Angela was in the hospital and her blood pressure had skyrocketed to
Yeah.
like 250 over 230. I know, I should have taken a picture of the monitor. I mean, that is not where you want to
Wow.
be. It's a
Wow.
miracle she didn't blow up like a landmine, literally, right?
Right. Right.
Somehow she pulled out of this, right? But she was still in the hospital. I remember coming home from the hospital. I was in there all day with her, and it's 8 o'clock at night. Visiting hours are
Mm-hmm.
over, right? And I
Yeah.
thought, okay, so I came home to my house on Christmas Eve. It's completely dark. There's no Christmas tree. There's no presents. There's no party. There's nothing, right?
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
standing literally almost where I'm standing right now. I'm standing
Mm-hmm.
in my house in the dark, and I thought, okay, when this episode is all over, is she coming home with or without me? That was the first time when I was very conscious of the fact that this could
Yeah.
be it, right? And I
Right.
remember thinking, well, how in the world? And then I remember that's when I thought about Shackleton and that quote about the naked soul of man. And
Right.
I thought to myself, well, what would Shackleton say to me tonight if
Mm-hmm.
he was standing literally right next to me, right?
Yeah.
He would say, Mike, look at the picture on the wall, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let her go. Let go of Angela. And I remember having this conversation with him saying, how am I going to let her go? What do you mean, let
Right.
her go? I've
Right.
been with this lady for more than half of my life.
Right.
Angela literally was the first and the only girlfriend I ever dated from day
Mm-hmm.
one, literally,
Yeah.
right? I
Yeah.
can't do this. And then he said, Mike, one of the promises of God is this: you will never, in capital letters, never get more than you can handle. That's a promise he's never broken, Mike. Trust him. And that's when I consciously let her
Let it
go.
go.
Yeah,
Yeah.
when I say let it go, I meant I'm going to be resolved no matter what happens.
Right.
I'll be okay.
Right.
No matter where I land, how I land, I'll land somewhere, right? And that was really the first time that I learned to let go of Angela. And I'll tell you, that was probably the hardest yet the most liberating decision I ever made.
Yeah.
It's amazing when you let go of that, how you just, it's like chains. It's like taking the backpack full of rocks off. It's amazing how much lighter on your feet you are when you don't have the backpack of rocks, right?
Right. Right.
And I thought, wow, that was the first time I was conscious of the fact that, well, this is why you went to Antarctica, Mike. This is why you followed a guy named Shackleton. This is why you lived in a freezer for 2 years. It was
Right.
to learn to let go.
Yes. Yeah.
And that was the first time I was conscious of that. And of course, the mountain got steeper in 23 when I
Mm-hmm.
really had to let her go. But I was prepared because 2018 here in my house on Christmas Eve prepared me for what was to come. And I'll say this to your viewers:
Yeah.
all the things you're living with that you've already lived through and that you're currently going through
Mm-hmm.
are to prepare you for the next intersection.
Yeah.
Because the mountain gets steeper, folks. It
Mm-hmm.
always gets steeper, right? It just
Mm-hmm.
will, right? The severity of the storms is going to increase as time goes on,
Right.
but you'll be prepared and you'll
Yeah.
never get more than you can handle. Never.
Right. Right. Yeah.
If we
I
can't put our
remember.
faith in that, I don't know what we can, right?
Well, it's a choice to put our faith in that, Mike. And I
It is.
distinctly remember my
It is.
partner
You're
saying
right.
to me, if Sam dies, I'm going to lose you. And I said, that's not my intention. But making a conscious decision to allow what is meant to be, and to make a conscious decision then also to pick up the pieces and live on.
Yep.
So I think,
We have to make that decision. You're right.
we do. It's a conscious decision. Now, a lot of people don't want to make that decision. And whether you make it or not from a conscious place, you're still making it.
Right.
Yeah. So, as much as I hate to, we're kind of at the end of our time together. This
I
is
get it.
like gone in a heartbeat from my perspective. So, but what I'm struck by is I very much feel Angela's presence with us today.
Wow.
So, I've not had that happen before. Certainly in a Zoom call, you don't expect to have that kind of connectivity, but there's
Hmm.
no question her wisdom, her spirit, who she was and is now, is very much alive. And I want to thank her as well as thanking you.
You're
um,
welcome.
for this time. What a blessing.
It is. Thank you for having me as your guest. I'm glad to, if my life can be any kind of a light or a source of hope to anybody that tunes into your program, I'm glad to help.
Mhm. Well, I've no doubt that that is the case. So as we wrap up, just let people know where they can find you, where they can learn more
You're not
about.
going to confuse me with anybody else, right? If you just Google Antarctic Mike, you
Mhm.
will not miss me.
Right. Yeah. And there's YouTube. He's done a TED Talk. You can listen to him more. And what a joy today has been.
There's a
I
lot of
just,
stuff. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff.
yeah.
Thank you.
So again, thank you, thank you, thank you from the bottom of my heart.
You're welcome. We'll do it again.
Okay. All right. Take care, everybody.